How's it going?
Hi, George.
How are you?
Yeah.
Thank you. Only participants in the conference.
I imagine Lee will be. I mean, call it. or-
Yeah, go ahead.
Same place. Last month. Earlier this month, whatever it is.
Right. So far, so good.
It's good. It's grand.
Yeah.
I haven't seen quiet. I'm gonna try that. I hope he's got that sometimes, right? Next month.
So for special land use, we do need 6.
Science says. Lee dials in there in a minute. Fantastic.
All right. That was pretty straightforward.
It's required
People
actually.
have told me every night I was moving around.
Because I ended up at the 12.
So I would move around.
Oh, I see.
Like some military.
Really?
Yeah.
That's kind of fun.
Yeah. Let me know. I found it, but I figured I wasn't gonna dive back in there.
Exactly.
Didn't necessarily want me to do that. Look busy.
He's on Main Street.
Pretty sure that was it.
Lee.
Lee, are you on the call?
Deliver on down.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Andrew, did you say something to me?
Oh, Lee Kramer normally calls in, so I was just trying to talk to him, but somebody who's not there on the phone, so.
Oh, Mark Boudet is here.
Oh, great, we'll take you too, so.
Excellent. Thank you, gentlemen.
With that, we got a couple minutes. We'll call to order at 5:30.
That gives us our 6.
Yep, we do have 6, which we need for the special land use. Which is great. Otherwise, we have 3 really decent people.
George.
Yes. Oh, that's what's required for a school. How are you, sir?
Very good, sure. How are you?
Because it's a special land use, you have to have 6 affirmative votes. So if you even if everybody's in favor of the attendance, you can approve a special. land use. 3
I'm waiting for them to be.
Good to see you.
Something, and I never figured it out.
Kyle talked to him at the end, and then I, on the way out, I said, did you guys get what you were looking for at this meeting? Yeah, you did. No? Yeah. Yeah. They said, yeah, we're just here seeing government action, just, different school. Well, Iceman's not no problem there.
Okay.
Really?
You can give me card today, he's not even there, so.
Yeah. It's fun, it's not a great start.
No, I didn't recognize them, but they didn't connect anything.
I remember riding all those fire roads, so sand,
We didn't, they got those.
Yeah?
We're live streaming. You can see yourself and you can see,
I don't wanna see me.
no, you can't see. You can see Jeff.
That's good enough.
Who do we, let's see if we can do it.
I moved it over here just because the microphone, you know.
5:30.
This was in the way. All right, there we go.
It's going, Jeff.
990-9187. We, we're gonna call the meeting to order. So we could, call the roll, please.
Beth Verholling,
Here.
Mary Catherine Hammer,
Here.
Lee Kramer, Jack Deegan looks absent, George Pete.
Here.
Mike Naturkis is not here. Mark Bidet,
Here.
Andrew Bowman,
Here.
Al Dyke.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, just for anybody who hasn't been to a meeting with the current situation, we do have people who call in on the phone, and then we also look for comments on the YouTube channel. So as we go through the various motions tonight, we will, at certain times, you'll think I'm talking to somebody who's not here because I am. So we ask for comments on the phone, we ask for comments on the YouTube. We typically ask for comments from the audience first, and then go down through the two virtual meetings second. So first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the August 6th regular meeting. Has everybody had a chance to review those? Any comments or corrections? No? We have a motion to approve the minutes from the August 6th, 2020 meeting. We have support?
I second.
We have support. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay. That was easy. Public comment or correspondence? We got an email, look like.
Yes, that was included in the packet. Margot, who is our DDA director, sent in that email, basically talking about how much the downtown businesses are liking the temporary lifting of some of the restrictions that we had. Basically wanted to, put out the idea of maybe making some of those lifting of restrictions more permanent. I also included my comment in there as well, that basically I've been visiting downtown quite a bit, looking at some of these things, seeing what people are doing. And it really doesn't seem like it's impacting foot traffic downtown with pedestrian movement. We're seeing some businesses that have done it. Nobody seems to be really getting too carried away with it. So I didn't see that there were any real issues that I found. Just something for your thought.
And they do have a set expiration. Is that through 2020? Is that?
Yeah.
I think it's.
Is it October? I think it's October 1st. I'll check on the date, but it's mid-fall, early fall sometime.
I think it's November 1.
Maybe November.
Would that be an act of city council because we've already given our suggestions? Okay. So we
Yes.
wouldn't have to put that on the
November
agenda for
1.
September to make sure we talk about it before it lapses because it would be city council.
That's correct.
I think it would be city council decision, but they may, as they have done in the past, ask for planning commission's input on whether we should make those permanent or not. So that may.
Would anyone be in favor of putting it on our September agenda, considering giving any recommendations to city council? Because we wouldn't have to, I guess they would have a meeting prior to our meeting in September, so they could ask us for input. Okay. No problem. Okay. Any other comments on that? Email from the DDA.
So I have one other comment for public discussion. That's not on the agenda. In the last month, we've been receiving quite a number of phone calls, comments, and concerns related to political signs. Our zoning code really doesn't specifically address political signs to give people permission to do it or to prevent people from doing it. Our past practice has been that the Michigan Department of Transportation has rules and regulations for highways and roads that they control on how they regulate signage and keeping it out of road right of ways and various other things. Our practice has been to not necessarily limit the number of signs, but following in the rules and regulations that they provide. So with the number of comments and concerns that we've been receiving, my question to the Planning Commission is, I can continue to review and look at things as we have been, or the idea is we could look at putting this on the agenda as an item for further discussion if we wanted to look at potentially maybe making some rules and regulations of what people could do for political signs.
Do we have an opinion from either city council or from the city attorney that we're even able to regulate something like that, or if we even wanted to?
I can contact Jim Raymer and find out some more details.
I
on
can,
that.
Passing judgment whether I'm in favor or not in favor of regulating. I don't even know if that's.
Andy? I can say from my experience that the one thing we can regulate is the number and size of signs that goes on people's properties, but regulating content is really a no-go zone. So
Currently, what are the specific complaints?
Most of the complaints that I've received are regarding the number of signs that somebody might have. Where we have some people that have put up, let's say, 5 or 6 signs in a row down the property line, or 10 signs. I'm not seeing too much of that going on right now, but the number of signs is mainly the type of concern that people seem to be complaining about.
I guess, I wouldn't want to put it on the agenda unless we're confident it's something that we could even step in if we choose to step in. So if that's something we could get an opinion on, I think that makes more sense than putting it on the agenda and find out we shouldn't be talking about it. Sure.
And it may be safer to do it after the elections, have a rule that's put in place after this
It might
election.
be a little
Yeah.
late at this point.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone here in the audience for something that is not on tonight's agenda? Yes, sir.
My name is Peter Pappas, and it is imperative that I tell you something about myself because of the remarks I'm going to make. They are germane. I own residential property in Upper Springs, and I own commercial property in the downtown district. Many of you know me. I've been here every summer for 62 years. I am a resident of the state of Florida. I have served on the council on Sanibel Island, one of the most environmentally conscious communities in the nation. I am going to speak very briefly to an issue that many of you feel is settled. And I would like to advise humbly that I believe it is not. Harbor Springs created a special consideration for development, novel and unique, Main Street, Gardner, and Bay. You all know what I'm talking about. That property that used to be a gas station, later a hotel, and now something else. I recognize a plus, and I really mean it as a plus. Personal financial enrichment of the owner-developer. I see that. But I cannot find, no matter who it is I speak to in Harbor Springs, and I've spoken to a number of persons, including Mr. Grimm, a single public value. To the contrary, destruction of public value. What it is we created need not have happened. The property was like any other. To make a point, had we done nothing, the square area vertical of unencumbered view of the water would be the same as it will be when the developer is finished. In other words, the single value the single element, I should say, that provides value to property is unobstructed view of water. This one had it without our doing anything. The developer would not even have had to go and ask for variance from us. He could do what I just described is going to happen anyway without the changes we made. What we did for him, we will do for likely not for one citizen of Harbor Springs, not for one single owner of a piece of property in the downtown district. We went to 3 stories in a district that does not permit it, and we did it for the first time by special arrangement, first time in 123 years. What is it that motivated us to this position? What is it we were trying to do? If what we did not do injury to other citizens, after all, others, I can name you a few, who would have had a view if that were one level down. Would have had a view. Yes, not the kind of view most of us enjoy when we have our cottages on the water or our homes on East Bluff Drive. Why did we do this? What was the motivating factor? I am told that we had, when I asked, well, we had public hearings. Well, public hearings are a requirement of the process. It is how we make judgments about what it is we do that really counts. I am not going to take any more of your time, and I'm wondering if I had anything to say anyway. But I'll close and say this. When it comes to zoning, there is no element more important than height and density. These are the things, if altered, alter the scope of the community itself more than anything else. Not setbacks, not this. Density and height. You change not only the architectural character, but the cultural and the mood character of a community. We began something here we should not have started. I don't know what kind of comment you had in here, but we made a bad decision. I really thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for coming.
I'm sorry?
I said, thank you for coming.
You're welcome, Madam.
Any comments? Yes, there's a lengthy record of the property's approvals, numerous approvals.
Andrew, if I just want to say for George and Beth, that's the property where the new construction has happened, just in case you're familiar with.
There's a
Yeah.
10-plus year history of hearings and approvals, so encourage them to read it and thank them for expressing his opinion. Moving on to the first, any other comments from the public on something that's not on the agenda? Anyone on the phone here with a comment or something that's not on the agenda? Anyone on YouTube with a comment on something that's not on the agenda?
We have 5 watchers, viewers, no comments.
With that, we'll move on to new and old business. We have item A, public hearing, special land use for 135 Traverse Street. Application is for a guest quarters, and for those that are new, the process is we have a public hearing, and then we have discussion on the special land use. As you read through, Larry Nix typically provides a lengthy memo detailing the requirements of a special land use and the things we need to consider to approve or deny the application. So first, we would probably take a motion to open the public hearing for the special land use at 135 Traverse Street.
So moved.
You have support? Support. So is there someone here representing the applicant?
Hi, I'm Michelle Frizzell. I'm here representing this application and the contact. Given the lengthy agenda you have this evening, I think that between my drawings, the information submitted, and Larry Nix's memo, you probably have all the information you need, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do you have anyone here from the public who's looking to comment on the application being discussed? And Larry, before you provide your summary, would you want to close the public hearing, or would you want to do that as part of the public hearing? Just
No, we can close the public hearing. Up to you how we do
do you
that.
have anyone on the phone that has a comment on 135 Traverse Street special land use application? Do you have anyone on YouTube looking to comment on this application? Going once, going twice. Do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make that.
We have support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Larry, would you like to review your comments? and-
Sure thing. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This property is zoned R1A, and guest quarters are permitted as a use by right in the R1A district. So why is this before us? Because when a accessory building is 2 stories, that also requires a special land use. So in essence, the only thing that we're considering here this evening is, in this situation, is for the 2-story accessory building, because the guest quarters, the rules and regulations are there and apply. But the only thing that is under special consideration is this 2-story nature of the building. So I have outlined those provisions and how the applicant has addressed those. My conclusion was it meets all the standards in terms of height, in terms of size, that the ordinance requires for a 2-story building. They've also indicated, just ancillary, that their guest quarters is for friends and guests. It is not intended for a rental property at all. And they've made that affirmative statement. And so without further ado on this one, they also provided a review criteria for the special land use. And I had encouraged you to read those. I thought Ms. Brazell did a very nice job in addressing those 7 standards. And my recommendation to you, if we're going to pass this, was a positive motion, and that it meets the standards for guest quarters, it meets the standards for the site plan, and it also meets the special use standards as applied in the zoning ordinance or zoning code. I always leave the window open for conditions in case we have public comments that are concerning on this issue. But without those this evening, we may not want to add conditions to this. Mr. Chairman.
Does anyone here or in the public have any comments on the Larry's memo that we've all had a chance to read regarding the application, or Ms. Grisell's response to the conditions that are required? And it looked like everything is in compliance, and we do have the seven standards that, if anyone's not familiar with, that they need to meet. They're listed at the end of Larry's memo. Has everyone had a chance to review those and find affirmatively that those have been met? I'm trying to make this take longer, but you guys. It was, yeah, you get reviewed, okay. At the end of Larry's memo, there is, we do need to find affirmatively for things when we make a motion. So if anyone would like to make a motion reflecting what we discussed in Larry's memo and the findings that are listed 1 through 3 on the last page of the memo, that would be good. If everyone's comfortable with that.
So I'll make that motion.
And just to be clear, that motion is that the standards for guest quarters found in section 5302 have been met by the applicant as stated in this memo and discussed by the planning commission. The site plan review standards found in section 52.001 have been met by the applicant as stated in this memo and discussed by the planning commission. Special use standards found in section 52.21 have been met by the applicant as stated in the application and discussed by the planning commission.
That would be an accurate representation of the motion I did. Thank you, Chair.
It was kind of mumbled with the math.
I guess, yeah.
I think we have support.
second
Okay. We can do a roll call vote, please.
Al Dyke,
Yes.
Andrew Bowman,
Yes.
Mark Boudet,
Yes,
George Peak,
Yes.
Lee, Mary Catherine Hatter,
Yes.
Beth Verhoeven.
Yes.
That motion passes.
Moving on to C on the agenda, under new and old business, public hearing for a special land use. This would be at 413 Glen Drive, very similar to 135 Traverse Street. It's a guest quarters, which would require a 2-story accessory building. We have a public hearing. We have a motion to open the public hearing. We have support?
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Welcome to the public hearing for 413 Glen Drive. Is there anyone here tonight representing the applicant?
Hi, I'm Jessica Moore, I'm the architect. This is an application for, not a variance, it's a special land use, is that correct? To put the garage in the front yard instead of the rear. I took a few photos down there today, and I wanted to just show you what the front yard would look like versus the rear yard. If we were to put the garage where it's supposed to be, it would be down here on the beach. We've got about a 30-foot drop to walk out as it is now. This is the other side of that house, and then you can see, there it is. This is the garage where it stands now. We'd just like to add onto that garage and make it 2-story as well. And that would happen out here in the parking pad, but we'd still have 3 to 4 car spaces easily. It's a huge, huge parking pad. Regarding the 2-story aspect, I just wanted to point out what you can see here. I stood out on Glen Drive, took a picture of where the garage sits now, and then I outlined it in white. You just can't see it at all. If that were 2-story or even 3-story, I don't think you could see it at all. And then this shows the hill from the side view, but the front of the building faces the house. That's really the only elevation you can see that isn't tucked in the woods.
Thank you. Is there anyone here from the public present that to comment on 413 Glen Drive? Is there anyone on the phone here to comment on the application of 413 Glen Drive? Is there anyone on YouTube that would like to make a comment on 413 Glen Drive? We have a motion to close the public hearing and enter discussion of the application.
I'll make that.
Support?
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Larry, your review of this?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, this piece of property is zoned R1A, and a guest quarters is a use permitted by right, but a 2-story building and also a building in the front yard in this district requires planning commission approval. The 2-story element is a special land use. Placing the building in the front yard is just planning commission approval. It's not special use. But we're going to knit all of those together because it's all in one package. So the whole notion that we put it in, make them put it in the front yard between the house and the lake, it doesn't make any sense at all. Nobody around Glen Drive puts their accessory building in the rear yard because it doesn't make sense because that's not where you put them. You put them between the house and the road because that's where it makes the most sense. That's where this one was historically built. That's where it's being proposed to be enlarged. The illustrations that were offered by the architect are spot on. Once this is built, you're not going to see that building. It's going to blend right in with everything else that's along Glen Drive. It meets the height requirements, the size requirements from a footprint standpoint. The main house is no taller than the main house. It's only going to be used for guest quarters for friends and family. They've commented on that. Thus, that standard has been met. I've been through all the other standards, and I did not find a single problem with this application as it was very well done. The site plan criteria I went through, and that's found on page 3 and 4 of my memo, and did not find anything there that could be improved upon in terms of location or characteristics from the site plan review process. And then we also had the 7 special land use standards, which the applicant had addressed, that I thought were well done. I'm suggesting if you were looking at making a positive motion, we consider those, there's 4 elements there, but 2 of them are number 2 I see right now. It's amazing when you just look at things, all of a sudden you review it 6 times before you send it out, you find something that's wrong. But That's just how life works sometimes. Now, we didn't have any public comments, so the idea of adding conditions may not be appropriate unless you think it's necessary. Have any questions? Here, Mr. Chair.
Does anyone here in the public or on the phone or on YouTube have any comments or questions on Larry's memo that he put together, or his comments just now? Larry, the utilities, is that, I noticed there was a comment that they would, did they express that they would not be metered separately or are they able to deal with the city manager on that?
Well, if they are going to do anything other than using a one single connection, they need to talk to the city manager on that issue. And at this point in time, that hasn't been determined definitively, but right now, presenting it as a single utility connection.
Yes.
I'll probably stay that way. Okay. Any other comments or concerns regarding the 413 Fountain Drive application? Would we have a motion, positive, affirmatively finding that the 7 standards for special land use have been met, and everyone understands we're approving really 2 things in one, where it's okay to approve the 2 things in one motion. That being the location in what is unusually termed as the front yard, even though it really works as a backyard with these. So we're doing that as well as approving the special land use, which would be the 2-story accessory building.
Right.
And is that, apologies, I just want to make sure, so in your recommendation, is that covered by the site plan review? Is that what we're approving when we're approving putting it in the backyard, front yard?
The 4 standards, the findings that I have there cover the accessory building in the front yard, the site plan approval, and also the special land use approval for the 2-story building.
So with no other comments from the public or from the planning commission, do we have a motion to find in favor of the 4 recommendations that are made in Larry's memo, which I won't bore everybody with by reading them out loud?
I move that we make a motion to approve what you said.
Do we have support?
I'll second it.
Do we have any further discussion of the planning commission? Call roll, please.
Beth Rahali,
Yes.
Mary Catherine Hess.
Yes.
George Pete,
Yes.
Mark Bidet,
yes,
Andrew Bowman,
Yes.
Al Dyken.
Yes.
That is 6 votes, that motion passes.
Moving on to the most popular item of the month, the at 164 West 3rd Street, public hearing for the special land use. We would open the public hearing and take comments from the applicant, anyone in the public, or on the phone or on YouTube. So we have a motion to open the public hearing on 164 West 3rd Street.
So moved.
Second. Okay, all those in favor?
aye,
So do we have someone here
Yes.
for the applicant? Yes.
My name is Mark Finkelstein, and I own the property, and I'm here to answer any questions.
And just to be clear, because I went through this, I had to read yours 3 times, because I was looking for the guest quarters. This is a 2-story building, and the garage, main floor, storage on the 2nd floor, is that correct?
Right, I'm not finishing at this time.
Any comments from the public regarding the application at 164 West 3rd Street? Any comments on the phone? Any comments on YouTube? If we all know the drill, anyone, with that all considered, do we have a motion to close the public hearing on 164 West 3rd? I'll make that motion. Support?
second,
Oh, you got one in there finally on the phone, so.
trying,
That's right. All those in favor of closing the public hearing? Aye.
Aye.
aye,
Anyone opposed? Okay, Larry, your review of this? You got it with the memo?
This one's a little bit different than the last 2. One, the property is zoned R1C, and guest quarters is not under consideration here at all. The only thing under consideration is a two-story accessory building. As the chair pointed out in the applicant's firm, the applicant wants to build onto the garage with a second story because he needs more storage.
Well, just one comment, there is no garage there.
Okay.
That's what I thought it was.
All right, yes, there is, that's right. That's right. There is no garage there. And you want to build the garage and the second story. He owns this piece of property, and he actually owns a piece of property to the north also. And I guess when you have a lot of property, you need more stuff, more places to put stuff, right? Basically. So, the two-story element is a special land use. I've gone through the application, and the footprint of the building is less than the size of the house by the percentage necessary, 75%. The height of it is fine, and it's no taller than the house that's there. There's no occupancy in the accessory building for guest quarters, so that isn't an issue. If you ever want to change that situation, though, you're going to need to apply to the city to establish that as a guest quarters in that space. So that's, I just want to make sure you understand that, because it's just, you can't just finish it and just establish it. It needs to go through this process to be handled properly.
Would that be another special use?
Yes, it would be. Yes, because guest quarters is permitted as a special land use. The architecture of this building, as rough as it might have been, it does appear from the, looking at the Google photos of the house, that it should be consistent with the house in basic design. He's addressed the issues of the special land use with this submission, and I'm recommending that we approve this with the three stated findings in the memo on the last page. Mr. Chairman?
Any comments or questions from the public or the planning commission on the memo that Larry put together for the comments we just made? Anyone on the phone have a comment on the memo or the comments made? Anyone on YouTube commenting? The only question I had, and maybe one generation with this property or off, was this configured at one point as a duplex, or is it still?
Actually, it was two apartments.
Yeah.
You know, two flats. And then builder totally renovated it, so it's now one.
It's a single family.
It's a single family.
Because I know the reason I was pretty sure that was the case, but I think if you had duplex and then you ever wanted to make this an accessory living quarters, you wouldn't be able to. So I just didn't want you to get down that path and find out you couldn't do that later. So it is a single family residence.
Yes.
And my only other question, I don't mean to, and I think this helps having the previous survey and none of the conditions have changed. Larry, you feel the drawings we have are scaled and accurate enough and complete enough for a special land use approval?
I think it's a fair representation of what the applicant intends to do. Should they have been a lot better like the last two? Most definitely. But as you see, what the submission here was they basically hand sketched by the applicant of what they intended to do. The other two that we just saw, and the ones we've seen previously, have been done by an architect and were professionally prepared. Definitely a difference in quality.
And I was just concerned from the standpoint of, really for the applicant's sake, making sure that this is all scaled and actually fits, and then finding out that something's a little bit off on the survey or the dimensions of the existing house. And would he have to come back? I mean, obviously we'd have to come back if something isn't.
Yeah.
So the next step
benchmark is the item that's on the screen right now, the illustration is a benchmark drawing of the property. And on that, with the cross hatching, is the area where the new garage with the upper level is going to be located. And that holds true. It meets all the setback requirements. It's there. It's the size he's indicating that he's going to be building. And so I find that to be a fair representation, and all the asphalt is already there, the hard surface.
It's just it's a tight envelope, so you
Yes, it is.
for your sake, hate to be off by, a few inches either way can make a difference, so. Okay. As long as that was, those were my only comments or questions. Do we have any?
And we can verify, if the concern of the planning commission is the accuracy of the drawing and making sure that things will fit there. Part of the process of the approval of this for the zoning permit
Right.
will be a footings inspection.
And that's really where it would be caught. So I just want to make sure we're approving, gives him enough, when you go do your zoning review, he doesn't end up having to come back here because this was off by a foot or two. But it looks like there may be a little bit of wiggle room based on the setback, there's a little extra room.
Is this located where the asphalt is, or is it where the trees are behind the house?
It's just a grassy area, there's no trees,
Got it.
so it goes up to the asphalt.
Really, the trees, I think that hedge is on your other property on Church, is that?
Yes.
Yeah, it's north of the line.
Yeah.
I don't have.
Yeah, I own the property behind the hedge there.
Any other comments or questions on the submittal? Anyone in the audience have a comment or question? Anyone on the phone?
I have one question for clarification for Larry.
Yeah,
Larry, now, I'm just a little confused by this. We're showing the green line on here. Is that the accessory setback for the zoning district, or is this being changed to a residential district? I'm just confused on that point.
I was too, because I think in the packet, this survey, I think, Mark, came as from a previous request that was related to the zoning. So the current zoning is R1C.
Yes, it is. R1C is the current zoning. The applicant.
It is, okay.
Yeah.
The applicant originally thought the property was zoned commercial. From how our zoning map is structured, it has a number with a circle on it that really refers to the parcel to the east when it was rezoned.
Is that be number 24 on our map?
That may be correct. And so when
Okay.
Mr. Grimm and I were talking about that, I recall when that other property was rezoned, but this one was not. And he did a record search on it and found that I was correct, that this piece of property, 164, was never rezoned. It was still R1C, but that was the application that had the site plan map with the illustration of where he wanted to build a garage. So
Okay.
that's why that rezoning application was still part of this information that you received, because it had that map with it. And it was all attached
I see,
together.
okay, that makes sense. So the property north of this though, now is that a B1 zoning, or does that also stay in the R1C district? Because I think I talked with Jeff once, and he indicated that, and I own the property with the number 14 on it, which is a B1, and I believe the condominiums, which are to the north of this property, they're a B1 as well?
No, they are residential zone.
They are residential
I
zones.
think, Mark, I think that's Harbor Place, and those are the duplex that's connected, and then I think 3 single-family houses, one of which is the applicant's.
Right.
The 458 Church.
Right. Okay, so the whole area is, I'm just asking these questions because at first it sounded like it could possibly be some type of spot zoning or something, but it's all residential and stuff.
That's right.
I think the property.
Okay, thank you for the clarification, Larry.
You're welcome.
So with that, if we have a motion to approve the application as submitted with the comments Larry made at the end of his memo. And we've all reviewed the 7 standards for special land use. We understand this will be used as finished as 2 stories for storage. And if the applicant ever wanted to convert that to residential, they'd have to come back for the accessory living quarters and meet those standards.
Yes. So I would move to approve the application based on the fact that we believe the standards for accessory buildings have been met, the site plan review standards as well as the special use standards.
Do you have support?
Support.
Do we have any further discussion by the planning commission?
Is that Beth that supported?
Yes.
Thank you.
With no further discussion, would you call the vote?
Al Dyke,
Yes.
Andrew Bowman,
Yes.
Mark Viday,
Yes.
George Pete,
Yes.
Mary Catherine Hannah,
Yes.
Beth Vermillion.
Yes.
That is 6, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we've made our way down to G, discussion of fence wall regulations. And I suspect most people are here for that. And if Larry maybe could give us a brief synopsis of how we've come to this point, why we're considering looking at those regulations in the zoning code.
A while ago, Mr. Grimm and I had a discussion regarding the situation. And I said, well, let me do some research and get back to you. And I looked at the zoning code, and basically the city permits fences at the property line in all 4 yards, 4 foot tall in the front yard, and 6 foot tall in the side and rear yards. And he said, well, what about if somebody wants to build a fence, a wall, inside the setback areas where a principal dwelling would go? Because the way our zoning code is structured, we have minimum setback requirements that create front, side, and rear yards. So the front yard setback is 20 feet. So if I build my house 40 feet back, what is considered that area between the minimum setback requirement and the front of the house? By definition, in our zoning code, that is a dead area. It isn't considered anything, because our front yard is the minimum distance from the road, from the property line to where the house needs to be set back. So if the house is set back, and we rarely see this situation in the city because all of our lots are so small. We have a situation though, oh gosh, I can't think of the name of the streets.
Fairview.
And
Dan and Fairview, yes, thank you. The lot was large enough and the home proposed was small enough that it fit well inside the setback requirements of the city. So the setback requirements were minimal, where the house went was well within that area. And so the applicant, the owner had asked, can I build a taller wall fence inside the setback areas? And the conclusion is, with the way our ordinance is written, yes, you can. Because there's nothing that prohibits that. There's some illustrations on the wall, on the screen now, that indicate what is going on at that piece of property. So that's how the decision was made that this was permitted. I've never seen anything. I've been doing this for a long time, not only here, but other places, but it's the first time I've ever seen this situation occur.
Larry, would it be accurate to call that you say inside the setback area? I think it's confusing. Would it be more or easier to understand it if you say that they built a fence inside the buildable area of the lot?
The building envelope.
The building envelope or the building cube. So they didn't build the fence in the setback area. They built it
in the building
where a structure could be built. Therefore, it's not regulated in the same way as if it was at the property corners or the property lines.
Yes, yes.
So the code is lacking that it doesn't contemplate fences inside what we might have expected to be the walls of a house.
The building area, yeah.
Building envelope.
That's correct, it does not. There's actually a very easy fix to this. that I put at the end of the message that I sent to Mr. Grimm. And it basically is changing the setbacks, where we define the front yard as the area between the property line and the face of the building. But the minimum setback requirement can be less than that. So if I had a front yard with a house between the property line and where the house is located from the property line and back, and that may be 40 feet, but the minimum setback requirement is only 20, the front yard would be defined as that area between the property line and the house, the face of the house. In the same way with side and rear yards.
Is there a reason it was defined differently, or is the way you're describing that we could potentially change it to the the best practice way to do it, or?
That's how we find it normally is done, especially when you have properties with large lots. Being when the ordinance was written, none of the lots here in town, 99% of them are pretty small. And so people struggle with setback requirements to begin with. So what we have experienced on this piece of property is something that the city has never experienced before, because it's just, it doesn't happen. But when we looked at other properties, there are a few others where this could happen.
I'm just trying to think of would there be something that we would be creating a problem for ourselves in changing that definition of the
Yes.
yard if we changed it?
Yes,
Okay.
there actually is, and Jeff and I just talked about that the other day.
So what is that?
If I wanted to put a pergola, if I wanted to put up any kind of a structure like that, not an accessory building per se, because we have regulations that allow where an accessory building can go, but there are other architectural enhancements to a property, a garden area, an entryway, that would then all of a sudden be prohibited. So we need to sort that one out a little bit as to how we address that issue.
Larry, the specific one that comes to mind as far as other structures would be I think there was an outdoor oven, it was a wood-fired oven.
Or outdoor fireplaces.
Yeah, and I mean, those are very nice to have, and.
Yes.
And I guess the wall situation is fence situation is not one, is our code unique in the fact that we say, like, I think Mary was saying, that we go so far as to say the minimum, that.
No, it's not unique. A lot
That's
of
pretty common.
cities do that.
Yeah.
Because they rarely deal with large lots.
Right.
In more rural communities and townships, they deal with the front yard being from the street to the face of the building. So they avoid this problem. But when people write city zoning ordinances, they usually don't contemplate that idea.
The fence usually has to go up the property line, or it would be blocked, right up.
Because 99% of them go there.
Is it, would it be, this is from a language standpoint, is fairly simple, but it does create sort of a collateral.
An unintended consequence that we need to address.
Would it make more sense to address fences and walls anywhere on a lot, or is that harder to regulate, or is that, that's really where the problem lies, is that, I know it's more complicated from a language standpoint, but it's more specific, so it may not cause, I'm just trying to think.
Those other unintended consequences?
Yeah.
Yes. That's a good point. I think it's something that Jeff and I need to work on a little bit. We need to bounce it off of Jim Raymer, the attorney, and come back with a recommendation to you on that, if that's a direction you want to go.
Larry, could I also suggest maybe that we also get some visuals, like in the zoning code section, to actually show people what we're talking about when it comes to the front yard and the setback, and where they could put a fence in, because I think that would help even the planning commission understand, even myself, better of what we're talking about.
For new members, just so you know, we don't, a fence or a wall or whatever you want to call it is usually an administrative approval. It's never anything that comes here. If it were in the central business district or something like that, I think it would come here, because pretty much everything there is site plan approval. But that's, I think it is something we probably, although it is unique, I think we probably do need take a look at it, whether we come at it this way and then fix the collateral damage, or whether we just are able to be very specific about fences, and we would have, if we did change anything, that would require a public hearing, so there isn't us just saying, well, you can or can't do this anymore. It would be a public hearing, and then that would, then the recommendation we would make would then have to go to city council to amend the zoning code. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
So it's an involved process. It's not just the 6 of us tonight deciding that this is a bad or good idea. So nobody wants that. So, are there any comments from the public on this topic? So, and just, especially with masks on and everything, if you could kind of stand up and state your name, where you live, and then if you could address your comments to us, and then as opposed to in between people in the audience, it just helps us kind of make sure we're hearing all the good comments. So.
I'm Rebecca Frascone. I live on Washington at the end of above the wall.
Can I get your address, please?
1035.
Thank
So I don't have an issue per se with the wall. I have an issue with the fact that I was denied my wall. I have 2 lots, just like that particular lot has 2 lots. Mine would have been in the middle of my lot. It would have been in my side yard, was to contain my dogs. They told me I had to have, it was Tim before Jeff came in. They told me I wanted to build a fence to contain my dogs. They told me it had to be 3 feet and it had to be see-through. And I said, well, I kind of wanted not to have a see-through one so that my dogs didn't see other things, you know? And then he said, no, it's gotta be see-through and it's gotta be 3 feet. I said, listen, my dogs are 75 pounds. 3 feet are not gonna contain them. My neighbors are not gonna be happy if my dogs get out. Please allow me another foot. I had to beg to get 1 more foot, and my fence had to be see-through. So I don't have a problem with this gigantic 19-block fence, but mine is in the middle of mine, and in my side yard, it was only 10 foot by 25 foot in front of my house, but it's really my side yard in the middle of my 2 lots. It didn't even reach the second lot, way far from the second lot, and I was denied. And I had to beg to get another foot. And I just need explanation why I had to do that and why I was denied, and somebody else could come in with money and build this gigantic thing around the whole house. And I can't contain my animals. Thank you for your time.
And I don't know the specifics of that because we don't have it, but my guess is when you say you have 2 lots, it could be, and don't hold, but it could be because there are 2 lots of record, and you may be actually, even though you live on them as one, it could be that the lots are 2 lots of record, so the fence may be actually in the setback of a lot, a side yard setback of a lot, even though you own both. So that may be.
No.
It's not in the setback.
It's not in, okay, that was my only guess, but I don't want to second guess what Tim did years ago, but I understand and thank you for the comment. May sort of speak to the fact we need to take a closer look at what's in the code for fencing, especially when it comes to animals, because you're right, if they can see out, then they run up and down the fence trying to get out. 3 feet is a pretty small dog. Any other public comments on, yes, ma'am?
Scarlett Richardson, I live at 398 Fairview Street. I was curious about what the definition of a face of a house is, because this house at Fairview, is the face of the house the wall of the house? This house has a veranda, which is a long porch that is completely open, it isn't enclosed. And it has columns supporting. So is the face of the house the wall of the house? Or is it the support of the veranda?
The past, the way that we've treated it in the past is that If it has a roof over it, we have considered it to be a part of the footprint of the structure. So sometimes when people have an uncovered porch, we may not look at that as part of the footprint to be included in the square footage of that. So I would feel in that case, they have a roof over that veranda that, you know, and then with that, it would not be any stretch for them to enclose that if they wanted to. So my belief would be that that would be considered the face, would include the veranda. Does that seem?
Yes.
So the setback would be determined from where the veranda starts.
Well, the setback is determined from the distance from the property line, which would be from the street back. So they have a 20-foot front yard setback, so you'd be coming out from there. But then
Okay,
if
that's
we're talking about the
that's
face
dead
of the
area.
building, we would be measuring to that front line of the building, which would then be the front line of that veranda.
Yes.
Okay. My other comment is, their immediate neighbors, I can't imagine them wanting to look at a wall.
I'll vote for that.
And it also blocks light.
And sunsets.
And sunsets, it affects, their plantings and all over their yard. Not just along the wall, because it blocks all that light
Breeze.
and everything.
Thank you for your comment.
It's a little bit confusing. This is many of the people.
Sir, could you stand up and just tell us what your name and where you live, sir?
Tom Swiss,
Great.
400 West Fairview.
Thank you. I knew that, but I just wanted.
You did. But, you know, it's just, in a democracy, we have checks and balances. And I wondered if this was run through that wall, the ideal of that wall was ran through any committees. Was that passed by some votes? And it just seems like one day, it's just a nice little field, and next day, there's trash, there's stumps, there's just stuff we've had to look at for 2 years, and no answers. And we need some answers, because it's hard on our blood pressure.
Thank you.
Yep, Patty?
I didn't mean to go in front of anybody, but we do have a problem with the wall. And it's oppressive, it's not neighbor-like. And as far as your last agenda item for 164 West Third, one of the bullet items says, shall be a location, size, and character that will be in harmony with the appropriate and orderly development of the surrounding neighborhood. This doesn't fit our neighborhood. It doesn't fit our town. It doesn't even fit the county. And that is our opinion, I know that, but I don't think it should have ever been approved.
My grandfather helped to build this home, this town, and back in the early 1900s, George Hartung. And I've just grown more in love with it every time I come here. And now I came up in '02 to live here. And it just, I hate to see something like, where's the next wall gonna be? You know, is this just a beginning? There's a big open land area across from this discussion we're having. Is that gonna get a wall? You know? And we just don't understand why something like that has to appear in Harbor Springs.
And once you establish a variation, it sets a precedent and it opens the door.
And I think it might be helpful to
All
visualize,
kinds
and I'm
Precedent.
not passing a judgment on the architectural style. I know everybody's tastes are different, but I think part of what Larry's explanation was, and part of the reason it doesn't come to planning commission, it's a administrative approval for the building permit, because part of the building permit process is you have to obtain zoning approval. Because this fence or wall is inside the building envelope, you could actually have a house the size of the footprint of where these walls are now, and that's part of the reason that it's, you know, right now, if you visualize that walled area as being a big house, and it's we've done some things over the years to try to minimize, we've actually decreased the percent coverages that you can have on a lot in town. So you try to prevent this thing that occurs downstate a lot where it's Bigfoot. You get a small lot and you can cover 70% of the lot. Well, typically people never did that before, but now when you see it covering a lot, you really notice it. So is it accurate to say, Larry, that where the wall is now, that it is uncovered without a roof, could actually be inside the four walls of a house.
Yes.
Because it's inside the buildable area or building envelope if everybody, I'm not passing a judgment on what was done, I'm just trying to explain to you the process of why it isn't something that requires planning commission approval, because it's really a zoning approval as part of the building permit process. And those lots, these large lots, we have a few of them in town, and they can have extremely large houses or structures on them because the setbacks are fairly, the percent coverage of the lot is smaller than it used to be, but it still allows for a very large house. And Layton Park happens to have some of the larger lots in town, well, especially when there were some alleys in there that were never used, and I think they were abandoned by the city. So the lots went from 120 feet deep to 132 feet deep, and that just adds to the buildable area, if that makes sense. So, yes, sir.
My name is Tom Preston. Same address. Our yard, because it's the two lots, even with the second lot, is big enough to do something like this. I'm not a millionaire, so it's not gonna happen.
Thank you.
I don't have so much of a problem with somebody putting up a fence. The backyard of the fence really doesn't even bother me that much. I'm just fortunate that I get to look at the wood side, and I know we're not here for tastes and stuff like that. But that wall has gotta be at least 16 feet tall. And we would much rather prefer looking at a house than looking at a wall. And anyways, because of the uniqueness of this situation, I understand your rules for the fences not going to the administrative stuff. But because of the uniqueness of the situation, it should have gone to you guys.
Thank you. Any other? Yes, sir.
I'm Greg Wheeler. I live one block farther on the corner of Ann and Perry. And I just wonder, should there be any kind of regulation to even have some kind of within the character of the area? I mean, this, in my mind, I think of this as a Fairview Fort. It just looks totally out of character with anything I've seen anywhere. It just seems ridiculous. Will this affect property values down the road if the neighbors want next to that huge wall, want to sell the property? Things like that is just so far out of character for this. It's too bad if there isn't any regulations that we don't have something like that. To be so radically, totally blown out of character for this whole area. I just thought I'd ask about that, suggest that possibly. Thank you.
We have had, I haven't done this forever, but it feels like it sometimes. We've had discussions in the past, more in the downtown, in the central business district, about architectural controls, and it was probably the fullest room we've ever had, and we decided that individuality was the way to go. So, but I think in this circumstance, it is a unique lot, a unique decision on the owner of the lot to do what they did. And I think it brings attention to the fact that we do need to either amend what is if you're not building a house in that area, can you build just anything in that area? And that's probably the gap that it's been uncovered by this. So.
Andy, if I may say, I think going through this master plan process, that might be a good question that we ask is, do we want architectural review standards to be incorporated into our zoning code as part of the public input session of this master public input? Because that's a question that really, there is something in the code that talks about the character of the area. However, there's no standards by which we can measure what character of the area means. So that's really where the question lies. So I think that's a good topic that we can put in for the public input part.
And for the public that's here that doesn't know, every 5 years we review the entire master plan for the city, and we state goals and then objectives. So it's not the letter of the law, but it's the guiding principles by which we're supposed to form the zoning code. So that's something that could be, and there will be hopefully some surveys going out to the public for input like that. So I appreciate it.
Andy?
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Diane Johnston, and I live at 883 Washington. Every time I go out my back door to let my dogs in or out, every time I go out the back door, that's all I see. And I'd like to know, what is the difference between Rebecca's double lot, where she wasn't allowed to put fencing? That is a double lot. That could have easily been sold as two separate pieces of property, but the lady that bought it bought both of them. So it's no different than Rebecca's as far as being a double lot. And I'd like to know, once somebody starts building, how long can this go on? This has been going on for 2 years. There's a big pile of barnwood out there. I've had pieces of wood and pieces of branches and stuff that ends up in my yard. I've had cement bags and stuff that have been blown over there. There's a pile of gravel out front that's been out there for 2 years. And we look at this many times every day. And I think it drags our property values down a whole lot.
It has been a mess for a couple of years, and it just goes on and on. Workmen will come in and work for a couple of days, and then you won't see them for a week or so. I know that's a problem up here in the summertime, getting people to work on one job. But it's just sad that that big black wall, I just hope they don't get it to build another one somewhere, because that just takes away from the serenity of Harbor Springs. That's not what Harbor Springs is about. You know, if you want to build a black wall, go up by Larks Lake, go to Cross Village, you know, go to Stutzmanville, buy yourself 5 acres, and she probably could afford it. And, you know, build you a fort. But why that was allowed to be put in there, I don't know.
And Jeff, what is the code on, in terms of blight, and from the time you begin construction, when a site is considered, is there an abandonment? And obviously, if it's going slowly, just so the public, I don't know the rules exactly, it's not really the zoning code so much as the city code.
Part of the issue here is we've got multiple projects that have overlapped. She bought the property about 2 years ago, and about 18 months ago, she started construction on the home. Basically, as soon as the construction on the home was nearing completion, she pulled permits to start working on, she put in 2 accessory sheds, and then pulled the permits for the fence and the wall. And there's been some overlap with that. So the house, I believe, is close to being finished. I don't believe she's got an occupancy permit on that yet. I think
She's
got
been
some
in it
things.
for at least 2 weeks.
And then we have the work that started on the wall. So I believe our zoning code, I would have to verify this and double check, but I believe that a property owner has from the time that the zoning permit is issued, they have 1 year to start a project. And I believe they have 1 to 2 years to finish a project once it's going. The building department, I believe, is open-ended, that once you pull permits, as long as you're continuing to make progress on them, that permit is still good and open. But as far as blight is concerned, we do have language in the city code, I believe, regarding blight, which states that once a project is finished, that all materials have to be removed and cleaned up. I have been in contact with the property owner at this current location. She's still making some progress on various parts of it. She is keeping me informed about when certain things are happening, when materials being removed. I believe she's gotten some of the blight type issues cleaned up fairly recently. She still has a ways to go, but she also has an active project. And it's kind of an understood situation that when anybody has an active project, there's going to be construction issues going on with that. And we see that throughout the city. I think partially this has been going on, 1, because we don't build much during the winter months, and 2, we had the COVID months where we didn't have building going on, which I think has exacerbated the issue at the time that this project was taken.
It sat there for quite a period of time this spring and summer. They weren't doing anything. And then I called to talk to Jeff and complain. And he came out, he told me, he said, well, our permits had run out. And within about 3 days, there was a new permit, and then the wall started. But there was quite a period of time where absolutely nothing was happening except for the wind blowing around the tarp over the wood, the barn wood and stuff. And looking out my kitchen window, or when I let my dogs in and out, every day you see cars that come down, stop, take pictures, pull in people's driveways. You know, people question all the neighbors, hey, what's going on here and whatnot. It's just a pain. It's a real pain to all the rest of us.
Some of us have been calling it the Great Wall of Harbor.
On your way home tonight, swing up to West Fairview,
Please.
and just ask yourself, would you like that wall adjacent to your lawn? You know, would you like that in your yard?
I understand.
And take a good look at it.
Please do appreciate what we can do tonight is consider, and we are going to consider changing the rules. This is a unique situation. We did not have the power to approve this or not approve it. And what our personal feelings are on the aesthetics of that, we really shouldn't be. That's everybody's own personal choice.
We went and saw Mr. Hoffman, we got 10 trees coming, so that'll help somewhat.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
My name is Rebecca Adams and I live at 1031 Washington Street. In this second picture, with the fence, my house is that tall one up to the back. So I actually don't see the stone wall. I see the wall that runs, the wood wall that runs, and I don't know my directions, north and south, yep. And while I don't want you to tell me what to build on my property, I don't necessarily want that for, I guess, I don't want to start that. I don't want, that's one of the reasons that I, love where we live. However, I just came down and asked Jeff about a fence permit myself because I have a puppy and older dogs and I'm looking at doing that. But a fence is only going to just keep my puppies in. But if I were to back up my allotted 6-foot fence in my backyard, her fence is double that along the backyard, my backyard. Is that her backyard and her side yard? Those clearly are not the same dimensions that Jeff gave me for front, side, and backyards. I just am very confused about with everybody else about, I understand tonight better. Thank you for explaining that basically this is happening because she's way farther in and not on her property lines. But some of us don't have that luxury. My backyard is, thank goodness for the abandoned alley that gained me some feet. Thank goodness for that. But I don't have the luxury of coming in to be able to put a giant fence to cover a fence. So, like I said, I own a salon in Harbor Springs, and one of the things that's frustrating, and it's just my opinion, is I'm tired of talking about the law. Everybody that comes into the salon, no joke, all the ladies drive by and take pictures. They call back to the salon and say, what is going on? And unfortunately, what it's become is a joke. And that really bothers me, honestly, that it's a joke. I don't know if everybody knows it's going to be painted pink. The wall will be pink. I've heard that, some of that wood is going to be decorated, put on the wall and decorated. It just seems to me that it's becoming, or it will be, the joke of Harbor Springs. And I'm really sad about that. I just had my house appraised for to refinance it, and it went very well, and but one of my concerns was, is this going to affect the appraisal? And of course, it doesn't really affect the appraisal. However, I'm concerned that if I wanted to turn around and sell my house in a couple of years, that I would have difficulty selling. Because if you're standing in my backyard and on my deck, that wall, the entire thing, it is so large it actually casts like this weird color, I kid you not. And I'm concerned about resale value for my home. That's all I see out of every back window of my home is her fence and her thing. I just can't imagine what they brought when she brought this and said, I'm gonna do the whole perimeter. Was that you guys that she had to go to, or was that the county? She had to have gotten permission from somewhere, right? Where was that, from you guys here?
She got it from the city, yes.
Okay,
But not the planning commission,
okay.
because it's an admitted.
Because everybody tells me that probably should have came to us, and is that not true, that we wouldn't have gotten notification that, okay.
Well, the situation, if I can expand on this a little bit, is if somebody with residential property, if somebody is requesting to do something for residential property, it's an administrative decision by the zoning administrator or myself.
Okay.
And if it meets the requirements of the zoning code, I can't deny it. I have to approve it.
Okay.
If it's something that requires some type of special permission, like we had the earlier discussions here with people that wanted to do guest quarters and two-story garages, then it comes to the planning commission for a special land use review where they review those extended standards. But when somebody comes to me with a plan that meets all of the requirements of the zoning code, that, you know, that I have the authority to approve or deny, I have to go by what the zoning code says and issue that approval in this instance.
Okay. Question, because there's two different mediums of, you know, we have cement and then we have this wood, was she not allowed to do all cement or all wood? Do you know?
My understanding, and again, this is just, you know, from a conversation with her, she chose to do cement in the front. I think her wish would have been to do a wall all the way around it. I believe the style that she's going for is the Adobe look that you see in Southern California and Texas. My understanding is that she would have preferred to have done the cement wall all the way around, but due to costs, she did the wood on three sides to keep the costs.
Would the city have allowed a cement wall complete around?
If it meets the zoning criteria, which we determined that this does, then yes, I would have had to approve that.
And I think, I mean, all these are good comments for us to hear, and we're, you know, while we're aware of the situation because we live in town, we're not aware of it from the standpoint we don't regulate these types of approvals. But, you know, I don't want to speak for everybody here, but I think it's evident, you know, from this. Unfortunately, it took one instance to bring it this blind spot, if you will, in the zoning code regarding walls and fences to our attention and to Jeff and Larry's attention. And I think we need to take these comments and have them give us their professional opinion on how to fix this. Because obviously neighborhoods such as yours, you know, don't want to see more of it. And others probably don't as well. So that's the best we can do for you tonight, is to say that we'll have the Larry and Jeff draft language that we can consider. And then our role in this is that we make recommendation to city council after a public hearing. That if we all recommend to city council, then the city council is the one who amends the zoning code that would hopefully include regulations that would control, you know, regulate this more in the future. So that's really the best we can do tonight. We did not approve this, and it's not something that we want to pass judgment on, but we can improve the zoning code so there's more regulation in the future. Go ahead, Beth.
If we take those steps, it goes to the city council and the zoning is changed, do all these poor people that are upset have any recourse then to get rid of the wall?
Then it would be an existing non-conforming use. So I'm not a lawyer and I don't want to pretend to be one, but my understanding is that if something exists and the zoning code is then changed subsequently, it is not, they do not have to come in compliance with that. If it were, and I don't know if, you know, they couldn't alter it significantly, but we're getting into the weeds a little bit on that. Maybe we ought to get our professionals to give us advice on that first. So
That would be grandfathered in, so to speak.
I am not the authority to say that, but that is my understanding, speaking in general terms, not about this specific instance.
And really, I know we can't do much about it, you know, obviously, but I just would really like not to see this happen again.
I agree.
That's really,
Yeah.
I mean, if that's all we can make sure that just happens, because it is, we didn't eat outside on our deck all summer.
We're wondering how it ever happened once.
Yeah.
You know, what the hell happened and how did this get, you know, it's just like we shake our heads. You know, it'd just be a nice little quiet neighborhood, nice field, deer, you know, grapevines and stuff.
I understand.
That sounds great.
Appreciate your comments. Is there any new comments tonight on?
Well, just,
Yes.
this whole style is more New Mexico than anything else.
I
It's much
understand.
more New Mexico than California or anywhere else. And
And we don't have
what are
architectural
we
control in
gonna do
our.
when she paints it pink and starts painting New Mexico inspired multicolored serpents and all kinds of other designs on it, or
We in Harbor Springs don't regulate aesthetic. And that's been
somebody
the
needs to
message
regulate
we've gotten.
something
And
somewhere along the line.
yeah, I'm not defending anybody's choice and taste. My house, a lot of people look at it and think it looks like it landed there. So, I mean, it's all, we do not have, all I can answer that was, we do not have architectural controls. and-
I understand that, but it is so far out,
Thank you.
something needs to be reviewed.
Yes,
In a
ma'am.
hurry.
My question is, even though it was allowed for her to build where she built the wall, isn't that considered like a fence? So why wouldn't that have had, still be the 6 foot instead of, we were been told that you're lucky she didn't go any higher, she could have gone 35 feet.
And I understand from the explanation that we've gotten tonight is that because it is in the buildable area of the lot, it is not regulated as if it would have been regulated had it been in the 20 feet in the front yard, 6 or 10 feet on the side yard or in the backyard. That's the answer that we got tonight.
John Leo, 510 West Summit Street. And just to add to what Andy has said, there will be more opportunities for public input on this as we look at the master plan. So please, thank you all for being here tonight. I'm on city council. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the input. There will be other opportunities to participate and make it known.
And we be notified?
The public hearings, if we, so if, we're gonna ask, I think tonight, not speaking for the planning commission, if we make a motion, which I hope we do, to ask Larry Nix to draft language that would prevent something similar from happening in the future, that would then be put on our agenda for the next meeting. And then if we do decide to adopt that language for a public hearing, it would be noticed in the paper, on the city website, and so there would be notice given.
Are the agendas in the paper?
No, so the agendas are only so what goes in the paper is a notice for a public hearing. The agendas are on the website and on social media and posted on several locations at town, IGA, post office.
And why are they not in the newspaper?
The notice for public hearing would say like tonight's, we don't put the entire agenda in the paper, but what we do put in is like the 3 items we did tonight, those special land use public hearings, those are all advertised. And
Why isn't the complete agenda in the newspaper?
the agenda, I believe, is available on the website.
Why isn't it in the newspaper?
I don't believe it's required by law, but I'm not certain.
Part of the reason why it's not in the newspaper is the agenda is usually made within a week or less than the meeting itself, because it adjusts. And so because it's only a weekly newspaper, they may miss, and you see the agenda in the paper one day and the next day is the meeting, or it was 2 days ago. So that's just not fair.
And I think the public hearing notices by law are required to be put out much further in advance. The idea of giving people more opportunity to see it, that's fine. So, and the agenda it's really just a document for us to know what we're supposed to go through. The things that are required for public hearing are noticed significantly further in advance than the agenda is completed.
And then just one last question. We're using the terms fence and wall interchangeably. Is that per our code? Those two
Yes.
are equivalent terms?
That is correct.
So,
Yes, ma'am.
so because my dog fence that I have is in the middle of my property lot, then I don't have any restrictions. But at this point now, I can make my wall as tall as I want, and it can be solid where my dog is.
As you may have noticed from this meeting, we don't, as the planning commission, work with fences and walls because it is an administrative approval. So we rarely ever deal with that specific portion of the code. I don't think it would be smart for me to try to guess at your particular situation. And I would recommend talking to Jeff. And if
Because I mean, that's what you guys were saying, it's in the zone where there's no regulations.
the building.
I mean, I don't know how I was told because I had to give exactly where my house is, where the property lines is, and where the fence was gonna be. So Tim Grimm knew exactly where my fence line was, and he told me that's what it was. So he knew it wasn't anywhere close to my lines. So,
I can't answer that because I wasn't Tim.
I would just ask that you come in and meet with me and we can discuss and review what you have and what you might like to do if you'd like to do something different. I can't talk about, I don't know what the reasons why that Tim made the decision he did or what rules were in place at that time. But we can review the rules that are currently in place now and maybe come up with a better solution to your situation. If you'd like to come in and meet with me sometime.
Do you think discussing this with Sally, that she might say, well, I can knock 10 feet off or something?
We're not in a position to do that. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm speculating about someone I don't know.
I have a question for Jeff. How many structures is she allowed on her property?
Well, I mean, we have regulations on the number of structures related to the principal building and accessory structures as far as sheds and garages. But when we get into just structures in general, I don't believe that we have a limitation on the number. When we, because a number of different things come into there. We can't really have something in our zoning code for every concept somebody might want to do. We don't have anything in the zoning code about, swing sets as an example. So if somebody wants to do a swing set, that's just a structure. And our rules and regulations state that it needs to be, that structures need to be within the setbacks. So that is potentially another thing that could maybe be an
I
unintended
think
consequence.
the definition would be a permanent structure. I mean, the only one that we personally on this planning commission have dealt with recently that was sort of not passing judgment on the characteristics, but just sort of an odd request, it was an outdoor, it was basically a pizza oven. And it was one that we all sort of scratched our heads and said, well, we haven't had that before. It was permanent because it had a foundation, it was attached to the land. So that, in Larry's comments, we may want to expand this from just walls and fences, which are clearly defined in the code, to structures that are attached to the land in a permanent manner, which somebody smarter than me can figure out a way to describe that. But what if it's a giant yard sculpture? I don't know. That gets in, you get into things that are hard to define every little possible contingency. This obviously was something in the code that we weren't aware was a possibility, and now that we are, we hope to take action on it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all for coming in. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Are there any comments on this topic from anyone on YouTube or on the phone? I believe we've reached the end of our agenda. Are there any member comments?
I'd like to make this one comment, that we consider those. Am I on?
Yep.
Okay, I just wanted to make a comment that the first two cases tonight, we've had several of these now. It seems like a lot hinges on a little bit between 1.5 and 2 stories. And I guess I'm not really clear on why we have that in there. We allow 2 stories as a special use, but 1.5 is straightforward. Just what would be the conditions where we would deny a 2-story accessory building?
Well, basically, Mark, it would be, if it doesn't meet the standards that we have for consideration of a 2-story building, accessory building, which is the architectural style. It could be taller than the house itself. You could be wanting to put up a 2-story accessory building, but the house itself was only 1 story. And then thus the 2-story building would not be permitted as an accessory building. If the if they wanted to put up a metal pole barn as an accessory building, that would not be permitted. So there are situations that exist that would prohibit a 2-story accessory building.
As a
Okay. That makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other member comments? Any other comments from the public, the internet, or the telephone? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Do you want us to